Welcome to Sleep Easy, where we invite you to relax and leave the day behind. I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this peaceful moment with us. Tonight's story is called The Knight's Journey, Chronicles of the Moonlit Path. In this story, we meet 12-year-old Ellie, a brave and curious girl with a heart full of wonder. Under the soft glow of a full moon, Ellie gazes out from her window in the quiet town of Willowdale, her imagination soaring as she dreams of faraway places. One night, a small, glowing visitor named Liora appears at her window. Liora, a moonkeeper, reveals that the moon's light is fading, threatening to cast the world into eternal darkness. The only way to restore the moon's brilliance is to retrieve the lost fragments of the lunar crystal scattered across mystical realms. Liora needs Ellie's help, and with an enchanted compass in hand, Ellie embarks on a journey that will lead her through magical forests, hidden paths, and deep secrets, all under the watchful gaze of the moon. Now, as you settle into your bed, take a slow, deep breath. Let the weight of your body relax into the surface beneath you. With each breath, feel your muscles soften and your mind quiet, ready to drift into a peaceful, restful sleep. The night was quiet, with only the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. Ellie sat on the windowsill of her small bedroom, bathed in the silver glow of the full moon. The town of Willowdale, with its quaint cottages and winding cobblestone streets, stretched out beneath her like a storybook scene. Everything seemed so still, as though the entire world had paused to admire the moonlit beauty of the night. Ellie loved nights like this. The moonlight made her world feel magical, as if anything could happen. It was her favorite time to dream about adventures far beyond the sleepy town she called home. Her mother often teased her, saying she had her head in the clouds and her feet far from the ground. But Ellie knew that tonight felt different. There was a strange energy in the air, something she couldn't quite place. She leaned her head against the window and stared at the sky. Stars twinkled like tiny lanterns, and the moon shone brighter than usual, its light casting long shadows over the forest at the edge of town. Suddenly, Ellie noticed a faint glimmer in the distance. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but the glimmer grew brighter, moving closer. It darted between the trees, weaving its way toward her house. Her heart raced. It wasn't a firefly, too large and too luminous. It was something else entirely. Before she could call for her mother, the glowing figure hovered outside her window. It was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen. About the size of her hand, it looked like a tiny person with translucent wings that shimmered with a soft, bluish light. Ellie hesitated, her breath caught in her throat. Then, the creature knocked gently on the glass, its sound barely audible. "Don't be afraid," a melodic voice echoed in her mind. Startled, Ellie realized the creature was speaking to her without words. She opened the window cautiously, letting the cool night air rush into her room. The creature floated inside, its light illuminating the walls with a calming glow. What are you?" Ellie finally managed to ask. I am Liora, the creature replied, her voice like the tinkling of wind chimes. A Moonkeeper. I've come to ask for your help. Ellie blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. Help? With what? Leora's glow dimmed slightly, as if the weight of her words were too heavy. The moon is in danger. Its light is fading, and soon, the balance of night and day will be lost. If the lunar crystal is not restored, the world will be shrouded in eternal darkness. Ellie stared at Liora, her mind racing. Eternal darkness? Lunar crystal? It all sounded like something out of a bedtime story. But the sincerity in Leora's voice was undeniable. Why me? Ellie asked. Because you have the heart of an adventurer, Liora said, her tiny face softening into a smile. And because you see the magic in the world when others do not. You are the only one who can undertake this journey. Ellie hesitated, her thoughts swirling. She wasn't sure she believed in magic, but deep down, she had always felt there was more to the world than what met the eye. And now, standing in her room with a glowing creature asking for her help, she couldn't deny the thrill of curiosity and excitement rising within her. What would I have to do? She asked finally. Liora brightened, her light glowing stronger. First, you must take this. She reached into a tiny satchel slung over her shoulder and pulled out a small, intricately designed compass. Its needle glowed faintly, spinning until it pointed toward the forest. This is the compass of starlight, Liora explained. It will guide you to the fragments of the lunar crystal. The first fragment lies in the Whispering Woods, just beyond your town. Ellie took the compass, its surface cool and smooth in her hand. The needle glowed brighter when she held it, as if recognizing her touch. Will you help us, Ellie? Liora asked, her voice filled with hope. Ellie glanced out the window at the moonlit forest. Fear mingled with excitement in her chest, but the thought of an adventure, a real adventure, was too tempting to resist. She nodded. I'll help. Leora's wings fluttered with joy, and she circled Ellie in a dance of light. Thank you, Ellie. We must leave soon. The moon's light grows weaker by the hour. Ellie grabbed a small satchel from her bedside and filled it with a flashlight, some snacks, and a notebook. She turned back to Liora, her heart pounding with anticipation. Let's go, she said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. As Ellie climbed out of her window and into the silver-lit world, she couldn't help but feel that her life was about to change forever. Beneath the silver moon, her journey had just begun. Ellie stepped onto the cool grass, the faint glow of her flashlight cutting through the darkness. Liora fluttered beside her, the light from her tiny form casting playful shadows on the ground. Ahead, the forest loomed like a sleeping giant, its dense canopy shrouded in moonlight. Ellie clutched the compass of starlight tightly, its needle glowing softly as it pointed unwaveringly toward the trees. The air felt charged, as if the night itself was holding its breath. "Are you sure about this?" Ellie whispered to Liora. The Moonkeeper nodded, her wings shimmering with determination. "The Whispering Woods are safe for those with pure intentions. But keep your wits about you. Things are not always as they seem." Ellie took a deep breath and stepped into the forest. The world changed instantly. The air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting intricate patterns on the forest floor. The only sounds were the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. As they ventured deeper, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edges of her vision, vanishing when she turned to look. "Do you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Liora hovered closer, her glow brightening. "The forest is alive with many creatures. Most mean no harm, but some are curious about us." Ellie swallowed hard and pressed on, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of moss and leaves. The compass needle pulsed gently in her hand, guiding her deeper into the woods. Suddenly, a soft, melodic hum filled the air. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, wrapping around Ellie like a warm blanket. "What is that?" Ellie asked, her eyes darting around. Liora's glow dimmed slightly, her expression cautious. "A visitor. Be ready, Ellie. Some creatures of the night are drawn to the light of the compass." Before Ellie could respond, the humming grew louder, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was tall and slender, cloaked in a robe that seemed to shimmer like starlight. Its face was obscured by a hood, but Ellie could feel its gaze piercing through her. "Who dares to enter the Whispering Woods with the compass of starlight?" the figure asked, its voice deep and resonant, like the echo of a distant storm. Ellie froze, her heart pounding. I was asked to help," she stammered, holding up the compass as if it could shield her. The figure stepped closer, the air around it shimmering with an otherworldly glow. "Help? Do you even understand the burden you carry, child?" Liora flew forward, her light glowing defiantly. "She may be young, but she has the courage and heart needed for this task." The figure tilted its head, as if considering Liora's words. Then it raised a hand, and the forest around them seemed to ripple like water. "You must prove your worth," the figure said. "The path you seek is fraught with danger, and not all who venture into the night are meant to return." Ellie felt a surge of determination. She straightened her shoulders and stepped forward. "I'm not afraid," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll do whatever it takes to help." The figure studied her for a long moment before extending its hand. In its palm rested a small, glowing key, intricately carved with patterns that seemed to shift and dance in the moonlight. "Take this," the figure said. "It will open the way to the first fragment of the Lunar Crystal. But beware, once the key is used, your journey will truly begin, and there will be no turning back. Ellie hesitated, her fingers hovering over the key. Then she took a deep breath and reached out, her hand closing around the cool, glowing metal. As soon as she touched the key, a surge of warmth spread through her, and the forest around them seemed to brighten. The figure stepped back, its form fading into the shadows. "Good luck, Ellie," it said, its voice echoing as it vanished. Ellie turned to Liora, her heart racing. "What now?" Liora smiled, her wings fluttering with excitement. "Now, we find the door that this key opens. The journey has begun, Ellie. And you're ready for it." Clutching the key in one hand and the compass in the other, Ellie glanced at the forest ahead. The path was still dark and uncertain, but for the first time, she felt a spark of confidence. Together, she and Liora ventured deeper into the whispering woods, the promise of adventure guiding their steps. The forest deepened around Ellie and Liora, the dense canopy overhead swallowing most of the moonlight. Shadows stretched and shifted like living things, and the air was thick with the earthy scent of moss and bark. The compass glowed faintly in Ellie's hand, its needle pulsing as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Ellie clutched the mysterious key tightly in her other hand. It felt warm, almost alive, as though it shared her anticipation. She glanced at Liora, whose soft blue light illuminated the path just enough to keep the shadows at bay. "Why is it called the Whispering Woods?" Ellie asked, her voice hushed as though speaking too loudly might disturb the forest. Liora flitted closer, her glow casting faint patterns on the bark of nearby trees. "You'll see," she said cryptically, her expression unreadable. They pressed on, the silence around them broken only by the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. As they walked, Ellie noticed something strange. The air seemed to hum softly, a sound so faint it was almost imperceptible. Then she heard it, a gentle whisper, like the wind brushing through the trees, but with a cadence that felt deliberate. Words, faint and fragmented, floated on the breeze. "Listen," Ellie murmured, stopping in her tracks. The whispers grew clearer, weaving together into an eerie, haunting melody. They seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the forest itself were speaking. "Lost, forgotten, beware." Ellie's skin prickled, and she turned to Liora. "What is that?" "The forest speaks," Liora said softly. "The Whispering Woods are alive, and they test those who walk their paths. The voices warn, guide, or deceive, depending on the traveler." Ellie swallowed hard. "How do we know which one it is for us?" "Trust your heart," Liora replied, her wings fluttering. "And the compass. It will lead us where we need to go." As they moved forward, the whispers shifted. They no longer sounded random, but seemed to speak directly to Ellie. Brave, seeker, danger. She shivered but kept walking, her grip on the compass tightening. The needle pointed toward a narrow trail winding through a cluster of ancient oaks. The trees here were enormous, their gnarled branches twisting like outstretched arms. The air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder, their tones rising and falling like a song. Ellie thought she could hear laughter, soft, melodic, and oddly comforting. But just as quickly, it was replaced by something darker, a low, mournful wail that sent chills down her spine. "Stay close," Liora urged, her light pulsing as if in warning. Ellie obeyed, stepping carefully over exposed roots and moss-covered stones. Her heart raced as the forest seemed to close in around them, the path narrowing and the trees leaning closer together. Suddenly, the compass's glow intensified, its needle spinning wildly before locking in place. Ahead, a large tree with a hollowed-out trunk stood bathed in faint moonlight. Its bark was silver-gray, and its twisted roots curled into the ground like claws. "The door," Liora said, pointing to the hollow. Ellie hesitated. The hollow looked like a dark void, uninviting and foreboding. But the key in her hand pulsed warmly, urging her forward. "You can do this," Liora said gently, her voice steady. Ellie stepped closer, her breath catching as she reached the hollow. Inside, faint carvings glowed with a soft, silvery light. The symbols were unfamiliar but beautiful, spiraling and looping like the constellations. She held up the key, which seemed to glow brighter in response. Without thinking, Ellie inserted it into a small indentation in the tree's bark. The forest fell silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep, resonant sound echoed through the woods, like the tolling of a distant bell. The carvings on the tree lit up, and the hollow shimmered, revealing a swirling portal of light. Ellie gasped. "What is that?" "The gateway to the first fragment," Liora said, her voice filled with awe. "Beyond it lies the moonlit lake, where the fragment is hidden. But be cautious, Ellie. The challenges ahead will test your courage." Ellie took a deep breath, her heart pounding. She glanced back at the dark forest behind her, then at the glowing portal before her. "I'm ready," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Liora smiled. "Then step through, Ellie. The Whispering Woods have prepared you for what lies ahead." Summoning every ounce of bravery, Ellie stepped into the portal, the light enveloping her. The whispers of the forest faded, replaced by a calm, soothing hum. And just like that, the Whispering Woods were behind her, and her journey into the unknown had truly begun. The light of the portal dimmed, and Ellie stumbled forward, her feet landing on soft, dew-kissed grass. She blinked, her eyes adjusting to the ethereal glow of her surroundings. She found herself in a vast clearing, encircled by towering willows whose silvery leaves shimmered in the faint breeze. A tranquil lake stretched out before her, its surface smooth and reflective like polished glass. Above, the sky glittered with stars, their light brighter and closer than Ellie had ever seen. "Where are we?" Ellie whispered, her voice barely breaking the serene stillness of the scene. "This is the moonlit lake," Liora replied, her wings glowing softly as she hovered beside Ellie. "One of the sacred places tied to the Lunar Crystal. Somewhere here lies the first fragment we seek." Ellie glanced down at the compass of starlight in her hand. Its glow had intensified, and the needle was spinning erratically, as though overwhelmed by the lake's magic. "What's happening to it?" Ellie asked, frowning. "The compass is reacting to the lake's enchantment," Liora explained. "This place is imbued with powerful lunar energy, and it's testing the compass as much as it's testing you." Ellie knelt by the edge of the lake, staring into its depths. The water was impossibly clear, revealing smooth stones and faint glimmers of light that seemed to dance beneath the surface. "What do I do now?" Ellie asked, feeling the weight of uncertainty press down on her. Liora landed on a nearby rock, her expression thoughtful. "The compass is the key. But to unlock its full power, you must attune yourself to it. It will guide you, Ellie, but only if you trust it completely." Ellie looked at the compass, its soft glow reflecting in her wide eyes. She closed her fingers around it, feeling its warmth pulse against her skin. "How do I attune to it?" "Let the compass connect with your heart," Liora said gently. "Focus on what brought you here, your purpose, your courage, and your willingness to face the unknown." Ellie took a deep breath and sat cross-legged on the grass. She placed the compass in her lap and rested her hands lightly over it. Closing her eyes, she tried to center herself, letting go of the swirling doubts and fears that lingered at the edges of her mind. At first, she felt nothing. The lake was silent, and the compass lay still beneath her palms. But slowly, a warmth began to spread from the device, radiating up her arms and filling her chest with a calming presence. Visions flickered behind her closed eyelids, stars sparkling in the night sky, a crescent moon casting its light over a sleeping world, and the faces of people she had never met but somehow felt connected to. The whispers returned, but they were softer now, like a lullaby sung by the wind. "Seek, believe, trust." Ellie opened her eyes, startled to find the compass glowing brighter than ever. The needle was no longer spinning but pointed directly toward the center of the lake. "It worked," Ellie said, her voice filled with awe. Liora's wings fluttered in excitement. "The compass has attuned to you. Now it will guide you to the fragment. But be prepared, there may be challenges ahead." Ellie stood, gripping the compass tightly as she stepped closer to the water's edge. She hesitated, gazing at the still surface. "Do I have to go in?" "The fragment lies within the lake," Liora confirmed. "But the lake's magic will not harm you. It may test you, though, so stay focused." Swallowing her apprehension, Ellie removed her shoes and stepped into the lake. The water was cool but not cold, wrapping around her feet like a gentle embrace. She waded deeper, the compass glowing brighter with each step. As the water reached her waist, the surface around her began to ripple, though there was no wind. Ellie glanced back at Liora, who hovered at the shore, her expression encouraging. "Keep going," Liora called. "You're almost there." Ellie took another step, and suddenly, the compass emitted a beam of light that pierced the water ahead. At the end of the beam, something glimmered, a shard of pure, silvery crystal embedded in a rock beneath the surface. "That's it," Ellie breathed, her heart racing. She dove beneath the water, the cool liquid enveloping her completely. The lake was deeper than it appeared, and the shard seemed farther away with each stroke. But the compass's light guided her, unwavering and clear. As she reached the shard, Ellie felt a strange resistance in the water, as though something unseen was holding her back. A voice echoed in her mind, deep and resonant. "Do you truly seek the crystal, young one? What will you sacrifice to claim it?" Ellie hesitated, the pressure of the question bearing down on her. Images of her comfortable life back home flashed through her mind, the safety, the predictability. But then she thought of the people who needed her, the Moonkeepers who had placed their trust in her. "I'll do whatever it takes," Ellie thought fiercely. "I'm here to help." The resistance vanished, and the shard pulsed with light. Ellie reached out and grasped it, its cool surface sending a surge of energy through her body. She kicked upward, breaking the surface of the lake with a gasp. Liora flew to her side, her light glowing with relief and pride. "You did it!" Liora exclaimed. Ellie held up the fragment, its glow illuminating her face. "One down," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Let's keep going." As she waded back to shore, Ellie felt the compass hum in her hand, its connection to the fragment strengthening. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt truly ready to face whatever lay beyond. The moonlit lake shimmered behind Ellie as she and Liora began their trek toward the next destination. The shard of the lunar crystal glowed faintly in Ellie's pouch, its light dimmed but steady, as though conserving its energy for the challenges to come. Liora hovered beside Ellie, her glow soft yet reassuring. "Starry Hollow isn't far," she said. "But the path there isn't straightforward. The terrain will test your instincts and the bond you share with the compass." Ellie glanced at the compass of starlight in her hand. Since attuning to it, the compass seemed more alive, its needle pointing resolutely toward a dense forest ahead. She tightened her grip and nodded. "I'm ready." They entered the forest, its towering trees blotting out most of the starlight above. The air was cooler here, filled with the scent of pine and earth. The sounds of nocturnal creatures echoed faintly, but the path was quiet, save for the crunch of leaves beneath Ellie's boots. As they walked, the compass began to hum softly, its needle vibrating as if sensing something nearby. Ellie paused, holding it up to examine its glow. "What's wrong?" Liora asked, her wings fluttering with concern. "I'm not sure," Ellie admitted. It feels different. The forest seemed to respond to her hesitation. The shadows deepened, and the trees appeared to lean closer, their gnarled branches intertwining above like a web. Ellie's heart quickened. "This is no ordinary forest," Liora said, her voice low. "Starry Hollow's outskirts are protected by illusions meant to confuse travelers. Stay focused on the compass. It will guide us through." Ellie took a steadying breath and pressed forward, her eyes fixed on the glowing needle. The forest around them seemed to shift, the path twisting and turning in unnatural ways. At times, Ellie was certain they were walking in circles, but the compass's unwavering direction kept her moving. Then the whispers began. At first, they were faint, like the rustle of leaves in the wind. But as they walked deeper, the voices grew clearer, echoing through the trees. "Turn back. You don't belong here." Ellie froze, her grip tightening on the compass. "Do you hear that?" Liora nodded, her expression serious. "Ignore them. They're just illusions, meant to test your resolve." Ellie pressed on, but the voices grew louder, their tones shifting from warnings to taunts. "You'll fail. You're not strong enough." Ellie's steps faltered. Doubts crept into her mind, unbidden but persistent. What if the voices were right? What if she wasn't strong enough for this journey? "Ellie," Liora said gently, her glow brightening. "Don't let them get to you. Remember why you're here." Ellie closed her eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth of the compass in her hand. The voices began to fade, replaced by the steady hum of the compass's energy. When she opened her eyes, the path ahead was clear again, the shadows retreating as if banished by her determination. "Thank you, Liora," Ellie said softly, her resolve renewed. They continued their journey, the forest gradually thinning until they emerged into a wide, open field. Above, the sky was a canvas of stars, their light so vivid and close that Ellie felt she could reach out and touch them. "This is Starry Hollow," Liora said, her voice filled with awe. "A place where the stars meet the earth, and magic flows freely." Ellie gazed around in wonder. The grass beneath her feet sparkled as if dusted with stardust, and the air was alive with a soft, melodic hum. In the center of the hollow stood a massive, ancient tree with silvery bark that glowed faintly in the starlight. "That's the celestial oak," Liora explained. "The next fragment is hidden within its heart, but the tree won't give it up easily. You'll need to earn its trust." Ellie approached the tree cautiously, her heart pounding. The compass glowed brightly in her hand, its needle pointing directly at the base of the trunk. As she placed a hand on the tree's bark, a deep, resonant voice echoed in her mind. "Who dares disturb the celestial oak?" Ellie hesitated, then spoke with as much confidence as she could muster. "My name is Ellie. I'm on a journey to restore the Lunar Crystal and protect the balance of the night. The tree's voice was calm but commanding. The lunar crystal is sacred, its fragments guarded to prevent their misuse. What makes you worthy of this task? Ellie thought of her village, the Moonkeepers, and the trust they had placed in her. She thought of the challenges she had faced and the ones still ahead. I don't know if I'm worthy, she admitted, her voice steady. But I'm determined to try. I won't give up, no matter how hard the journey becomes. The tree was silent for a moment, then the ground beneath Ellie's feet began to glow. Roots spiraled upward, forming a small, glowing pedestal. Your honesty and resolve have been noted, the celestial oak said. The fragment is yours to take. But remember, the path ahead will only grow more challenging. Trust in yourself, and in those who guide you. Ellie stepped forward, her hands trembling as she lifted the second fragment from the pedestal. It pulsed with light, its energy resonating with the shard she already carried. As she turned back to Liora, a sense of accomplishment filled her. 2 fragments down, and the journey to restore the lunar crystal was well underway. The celestial oak's gentle glow faded behind them as Ellie and Liora continued their journey. The second shard of the lunar crystal hummed faintly in Ellie's pouch, its energy merging with the first. The compass of starlight pointed firmly westward, its light steady and resolute. As the two moved deeper into the wilds beyond Starry Hollow, the landscape grew quieter, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The trees here were older, their twisted trunks reaching toward the heavens like ancient sentinels. The path beneath Ellie's boots was soft with moss, muffling their steps. What's next? Ellie asked, glancing at Liora, who hovered nearby. The next fragment lies near the misty heights, Liora explained, her tone contemplative. But before we reach the mountains, we must pass through the gilded glade. It's home to an ancient guardian, a creature known for its wisdom and its riddles. Riddles? Ellie echoed, raising an eyebrow. What kind of creature? Leora's lips curved into a small smile. You'll see soon enough. They walked for what felt like hours, the forest around them growing denser with each step. The air turned cooler, and a faint golden glow began to filter through the trees ahead. Ellie's curiosity grew as they approached the source of the light. The forest abruptly opened into a breathtaking glade. Every leaf and blade of grass shimmered with a golden sheen, as if kissed by sunlight despite the night sky above. In the center of the glade stood a grand oak tree, its branches heavy with what appeared to be golden fruit. Ellie marveled at the sight, but her attention was quickly drawn to a figure perched on one of the lower branches, a large owl with feathers that shimmered like silver under moonlight. Its eyes were wide and golden, and it regarded Ellie with an expression that was almost human. Well, the owl said, its voice smooth and deep. A traveler in the gilded glade. How rare. Ellie blinked, momentarily stunned. You can talk? Of course I can talk, the owl replied, tilting its head. But the real question is, Can you listen? Liora fluttered closer, bowing her head slightly. This is Noctis, the guardian of the gilded glade. He holds knowledge of the fragments' location. Noctis puffed out his chest, his feathers gleaming. Indeed, I do. But knowledge isn't given freely, young traveler. If you wish to pass through my glade and find your next clue, you must solve my riddle. Ellie straightened, her nerves tingling with both excitement and trepidation. I'm ready, she said, gripping the compass tightly. Noctis's golden eyes gleamed as he spoke. I'm a place where darkness dwells. Yet within, I light up well. My shape may vary, yet I stay, holding secrets night and day. What am I? Ellie furrowed her brow, repeating the riddle in her mind. A place where darkness dwells but lights up. She thought of the glade around her, the golden leaves shimmering against the darkness of the forest. A lantern? She ventured, glancing at Noctis. The owl chuckled, a deep, melodic sound. Close, but not quite. Think further, young one. Ellie bit her lip, racking her brain for an answer. Darkness, light, secrets. Her thoughts drifted to the stars above, how they lit up the night sky and seemed to hold countless mysteries. A cave? She tried again, her tone uncertain. Noctis clicked his beak, shaking his head. Still not right. You're overthinking it, child. Look within, not without. Ellie froze. Look within. The answer struck her like a lightning bolt. It's a mind, she said suddenly, her voice filled with conviction. A mind can hold darkness, but it also lights up with ideas and memories. It changes shape with thoughts and emotions, and it holds secrets we may never share. Noctis let out a low hoot, his feathers ruffling as he nodded. Correct. A mind indeed. Well done, young traveler. Ellie exhaled in relief, a grin spreading across her face. So, do we pass? The owl leapt gracefully from the branch, landing on the mossy ground before her. You have earned my guidance, he said, his tone warm. The next fragment lies in the misty heights, as your companion has told you. But beware, the mountains are treacherous, and not all who climb them return. Ellie nodded, her resolve unshaken. Thank you, Noctis. We'll be careful. Noctis spread his shimmering wings, lifting off into the night sky. Good luck, Ellie. May your journey be guided by the light within you. As the owl disappeared into the darkness, the golden glow of the glade began to fade, returning the forest to its natural state. Ellie looked at Liora, a sense of accomplishment swelling in her chest. One step closer, Ellie said, gripping the compass. Let's keep going. With the gilded glade behind them, the two pressed onward, the compass pointing steadily toward the distant silhouette of the misty heights. The night was still young, and their journey had only just begun. The misty heights loomed ahead, their jagged peaks wrapped in veils of silver clouds. The moon cast a gentle glow over the terrain, highlighting the sharp edges of the rocky path that led upward. Ellie tightened her cloak against the rising chill, her breath visible in the frosty air. Liora fluttered beside her, her wings emitting a faint luminescence. The misty heights are as much a test of spirit as they are of strength, she said, her voice carrying a rare tone of solemnity. The stars will guide us, but only if you're willing to look closely. Ellie frowned, glancing up at the sky. The stars above seemed brighter here, their twinkling forms creating intricate patterns. They reminded her of the celestial maps her grandfather used to study, tracing constellations with a reverent hand. "What do you mean?" Ellie asked, tightening her grip on the compass of starlight. "The fragment we seek is hidden within the heights," Liora explained. "But to find it, you'll need to uncover the secrets of the night sky. The stars hold the key." The climb was arduous. Loose gravel crunched beneath Ellie's boots, and the path narrowed dangerously as they ascended. The cold wind howled through the peaks, carrying with it an eerie melody that sent shivers down Ellie's spine. Finally, they reached a plateau. The view was breathtaking, endless stretches of forest bathed in moonlight, with the vast night sky above seeming impossibly close. Liora landed on a nearby rock, her glow softening. "This is the place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Look to the stars." Ellie set the compass down and gazed upward. The stars seemed to pulse with energy, their positions forming an intricate pattern. She traced the constellations with her eyes, her mind working to connect the dots. Suddenly, the stars shifted. Ellie gasped as the constellations began to move, their shapes rearranging themselves into a new alignment. A faint golden thread connected the stars, forming a map that pointed toward a specific peak in the distance. "Did you see that?" Ellie asked, her heart racing. Liora nodded, her eyes gleaming. "The stars have revealed the path. But the journey to that peak will not be easy. The mountain is known to guard its secrets fiercely." With renewed determination, Ellie picked up the compass and followed the direction indicated by the celestial map. The terrain grew steeper, the air thinner. The golden thread from the stars seemed to guide her, glowing faintly on the ground ahead. As they neared the indicated peak, Ellie noticed a strange phenomenon. The air was filled with soft whispers, similar to those she had heard in the Whispering Woods. But this time, the voices were not taunting, they were gentle, almost musical. "They're guiding you," Liora said, her voice warm. "The stars speak to those who listen." Ellie followed the whispers to a small, hidden alcove. Nestled within the rock was a pedestal, and atop it lay the third shard of the Lunar Crystal. The fragment gleamed brightly, its energy resonating with the shards Ellie already carried. As she reached out to touch it, the stars above seemed to pulse in unison, their light cascading down to bathe the shard in a radiant glow. The moment Ellie's fingers made contact, a rush of warmth filled her, and the fragments light joined with the others in her pouch. "Well done," Liora said, her wings fluttering with excitement. "You've unlocked another piece of the crystal. But with each fragment you gather, the challenges ahead will grow greater." Ellie nodded, her resolve firm. She gazed up at the stars once more, feeling a profound connection to the vast, mysterious sky. The stars seemed to wink at her, their light a silent encouragement. "The night sky is full of secrets," Ellie said softly. "But it feels like it's on our side." Liora smiled. "As long as you trust in yourself and the guidance you've received, the stars will always light your path." With the third shard safely secured, Ellie and Liora began their descent from the misty heights. The stars above continued to shine brightly, their patterns shifting subtly as if watching over the travelers below. Ellie's journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly aligned with the rhythm of the night. The journey down from the misty heights was long, but the golden thread from the stars lingered, guiding Ellie and Liora through the darkness. As they descended, the air warmed slightly, and the landscape shifted. The rocky cliffs gave way to rolling hills and dense thickets of pine, their scent crisp and fresh in the night air. Ellie's boots crunched softly on the pine needles scattered across the forest floor. "Where to next?" she asked, glancing at Liora. "The moonlit lake," Liora replied, her voice steady. "It lies at the edge of this forest. The lake is said to mirror the heavens above perfectly, and within its depths, the fourth shard awaits. But be cautious, many who seek its treasures become ensnared by its allure." Ellie nodded, her grip tightening on the compass of starlight. The stars above had not led her astray so far, and she trusted their guidance. After hours of walking, a silvery glow began to appear through the trees. The forest thinned, revealing a vast, tranquil lake. Its surface shimmered under the moonlight, reflecting the stars so perfectly that it felt as though Ellie were staring into another sky. "It's beautiful," Ellie whispered, stepping closer to the water's edge. "It is," Liora agreed, her wings glowing faintly. "But remember, beauty can be deceptive. The lake's magic is strong, and it will test your resolve." Ellie knelt by the water, peering into its depths. The reflection of the moon seemed almost tangible, as though she could reach out and touch it. As she leaned closer, the surface of the lake rippled, and a soft, melodic voice echoed around her. "Seeker of the lunar crystal," the voice said, low and soothing, "you stand at the threshold of the moonlit lake. To claim the shard, you must prove your clarity of purpose. Step into my waters, and let your heart guide you." Ellie hesitated, her pulse quickening. The lake's voice was enchanting, pulling at something deep within her. "Ellie, be careful," Liora warned. "The lake's magic is powerful. Trust yourself, not just what you hear." Ellie took a deep breath and stepped into the water. It was cool but not cold, and it lapped gently against her boots. As she waded deeper, the voice grew clearer, almost conversational. "What do you seek, young traveler?" the lake asked, its tone soft yet probing. "The lunar crystal," Ellie replied firmly. "I seek its fragments to restore what has been lost." "And why do you seek it?" the lake pressed. Ellie hesitated. Her mind flashed back to her grandfather's stories of the stars, his gentle voice speaking of wonder and possibility. She thought of the warmth of his hand as he showed her the constellations and the sense of awe she had always felt beneath the night sky. "I seek it because it's my calling," Ellie said, her voice steady. "I want to protect the beauty of the night and the magic it holds. It's what my grandfather believed in, and it's what I believe in, too." The water around her glowed faintly, and the lake's voice softened. "Your heart is pure, Ellie. But to claim the shard, you must face yourself." Ellie frowned, about to ask what the lake meant when the water ahead of her began to shift. A figure emerged from the rippling surface, identical to Ellie in every way. Her reflection stepped forward, its eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and challenge. "What is this?" Ellie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's you," the lake replied. "Your doubts, your fears, your unanswered questions. To move forward, you must accept them." The reflection spoke, its tone a mirror of Ellie's own. "You're afraid you're not strong enough. That you'll fail and disappoint those who believe in you. Isn't that true?" Ellie's chest tightened. The words hit a nerve, but she took a deep breath and met her reflection's gaze. "I am afraid," she admitted. "But fear doesn't define me. What matters is that I keep moving forward, no matter how uncertain the path." The reflection studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then you are ready." The figure dissolved into the water, and the lake's glow intensified. Ellie stepped forward, and the fourth shard of the lunar crystal rose from the depths, its light casting shimmering patterns across the surface. She reached out and grasped it, feeling its energy merge with the others. As she stepped back onto the shore, the lake's voice spoke one final time. "You have proven your clarity and courage. Go forth, and may the night guide you always." Ellie turned to Liora, her determination renewed. "Another step closer," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. Liora nodded, her wings glimmering. "You're stronger than you realize, Ellie. Let's continue, the stars are waiting." With the moonlit lake behind them, Ellie and Liora pressed onward, the compass glowing brighter with each step toward their next destination. The compass pulsed faintly in Ellie's hand, its glow dimming as they left the shimmering expanse of the moonlit lake. Beyond its tranquil waters lay a dense forest, its trees gnarled and ancient, their limbs twisting together to form a canopy that nearly blocked out the stars. Liora flew close to Ellie's shoulder, her wings shedding just enough light to guide their steps. "The hidden path lies ahead," she said, her voice thoughtful. "It's a place that shifts with time, hiding itself from those unworthy." The stars may show us the way, but we'll need more than light to uncover it. Ellie gazed ahead into the shadowy woods. The air was cooler here, carrying an earthy scent of moss and damp leaves. Every step seemed to echo, as though the forest itself were listening. "What do you mean by more than light?" Ellie asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "The path responds to the seeker's intent," Liora explained. "It reveals itself only to those whose purpose is clear and whose hearts are steady." Ellie nodded, gripping the compass tightly. "I've come this far. I won't turn back now." The forest grew denser as they walked, the trees pressing closer together. Vines hung low, brushing Ellie's face, and the ground beneath her feet grew uneven. After what felt like hours of wandering, they reached a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a monolithic stone slab, its surface etched with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Around it, the air seemed to hum with energy. Liora landed on Ellie's shoulder, her voice tinged with urgency. "This is it, the marker of the hidden path. The symbols are a riddle, meant to guide you forward." Ellie stepped closer, tracing the symbols with her fingers. They felt warm to the touch, as though alive. The patterns were intricate, resembling constellations and spirals that seemed to shift and dance under her gaze. "What am I supposed to do?" Ellie asked, glancing at Liora. "Read them," Liora replied. "Listen with your heart as much as your mind. The stars have brought you here, and their wisdom lies within these runes." Ellie closed her eyes, focusing on the faint hum in the air. The symbols seemed to whisper to her, their voices blending with the soft rustling of the trees. Slowly, a phrase formed in her mind. "Follow the unseen, where shadows embrace light, and the silent stars sing." Opening her eyes, Ellie turned the compass over in her hands. The needle quivered, pointing toward the far edge of the clearing, where a dense thicket of trees seemed impenetrable. "That way," Ellie said, her voice confident. Liora nodded. "Then lead on." They stepped toward the thicket, and as they approached, the air grew heavy, charged with an almost electric energy. The vines and branches that had seemed so dense began to part, revealing a narrow path that glowed faintly with silver light. "This must be it," Ellie murmured, stepping onto the path. The trail wound deeper into the forest, its twists and turns disorienting. But Ellie trusted the compass, its steady glow a reassuring presence. Along the way, faint whispers filled the air, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "What are those voices?" Ellie asked, glancing around. "They're the echoes of those who have walked this path before," Liora said. "Some succeeded. Others didn't." Ellie swallowed hard but pressed on. The path grew steeper, leading to a rocky incline that seemed to spiral upward. At the top, the trees thinned, revealing a small plateau bathed in moonlight. In the center of the plateau stood a pedestal, and atop it rested a strange, crystalline key. The key pulsed with light, its facets reflecting the stars above. "The key to the hidden path's secret," Liora said, her voice reverent. "It will unlock the way to your next destination." Ellie stepped forward and grasped the key. The moment her fingers closed around it, the forest around her seemed to shift. The dense trees gave way to an open glade, and ahead, a new path stretched out, its surface shimmering with starlight. "The hidden path has revealed itself to you," Liora said, her tone proud. "You've proven your resolve once again." Ellie turned to look back at the forest, its shadows now still and silent. "Every step feels harder," she admitted, "but it also feels like I'm closer to understanding why I was chosen for this journey." "The night tests those it favors," Liora said, her wings glowing softly. "And you, Ellie, are proving to be its chosen guardian." With the crystalline key in hand, Ellie stepped onto the shimmering path, the stars above guiding her toward her next challenge. The path ahead was clearer now, a smooth trail of starlight winding through the dense forest. The trees, though still tall and ancient, seemed to lean away from the path, as if guiding Ellie onward. The key she had retrieved from the plateau pulsed gently in her hand, its light casting a soft glow that illuminated the darkness. Liora, ever vigilant, flew just ahead of her, her wings casting a soft trail of silver in the night. "The stars have guided you well," she said, her voice steady and encouraging. "But be wary, the path ahead is fraught with shadows, and not all that appears in the dark is as it seems." Ellie nodded, feeling the weight of Liora's words. The night had always been her ally, but something about this forest felt different, darker, heavier. There was a stillness that clung to the air, an unnerving silence that seemed to press against her chest with every step. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees began to thin once more. The starlight flickered, and soon, Ellie found herself standing at the edge of a small village. It was nestled in a valley, its houses clustered together in a neat arrangement. The air here was thick with an unnatural quiet, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting long, sharp shadows across the village. "This is different," Ellie whispered, eyeing the village. Though the buildings appeared quaint and peaceful, there was something unsettling about the stillness. The faint glow from the houses seemed to struggle against the overwhelming darkness that clung to the landscape. Liora hovered at her side, her wings tense. "This is the village of Shadowbrook, a place caught between light and dark, where the past and present blur. The villagers have long been lost to the shadows of their own memories." Ellie stepped cautiously forward, her gaze drawn to the main square. In the center of the village stood a large stone fountain, its waters still and dark. The stone was worn, etched with symbols that looked eerily familiar, but Ellie couldn't quite place them. Around the fountain were small, empty stalls, and the cobbled streets were eerily quiet, devoid of life. "Are they gone?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling slightly. "No," Liora replied softly, "they are here, but not here." Their minds are trapped in shadows of their past, and they cannot escape. Ellie's heart sank. How do we help them? The way forward is within the village, Liora explained, but it requires understanding the shadows. Only by confronting the past of the villagers can the path be opened to the next fragment. Their memories are woven into the fabric of the village. The answers you seek lie within the shadowed hearts of its people. Ellie stepped closer to the fountain, her fingers brushing against the stone. The moment she made contact, the symbols on the surface of the stone seemed to shift, revealing faint, glowing images. The memories of the villagers flickered in front of her eyes, moments of joy, fear, love, and regret. Listen to their stories, Liora instructed. Their shadows will show you the way, but only if you are willing to hear them. Ellie closed her eyes and focused on the images. The memories were fleeting, fading in and out like fragments of a dream. She saw a woman standing at the fountain, her face filled with sorrow as she gazed into the dark water. A child played nearby, laughing, but the laughter was hollow, like an echo of something long forgotten. A man, his eyes filled with an unspoken longing, watched from the doorway of a house. As Ellie continued to listen, a single image emerged from the shadows, a tall, imposing figure standing at the village's edge, its form indistinct, shrouded in darkness. The figure raised a hand, and the villagers around the fountain froze, their faces contorting with terror. Ellie gasped. "Who is that?" "That is the Shadow Master," Liora answered grimly. "A being who feeds on the fears and regrets of others. He has haunted this village for generations, trapping the souls of its people in an endless cycle of sorrow." Ellie's grip tightened around the key, its light pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "We have to stop him." "The villagers can't fight him on their own," Liora said. "They are trapped in their own fears. But you have the power to break the cycle." Ellie took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She stepped away from the fountain and looked toward the shadowed edges of the village, where the figure of the Shadow Master had first appeared. The darkness there seemed to writhe and twist, as if alive. The village was waiting for her to act, its silent whispers urging her forward. With the key in hand, Ellie made her way toward the heart of the darkness, ready to confront the forces that had held the village captive for so long. The stars above glimmered faintly, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. As she moved closer to the edge of the village, Ellie could feel the pull of the shadows growing stronger. But with each step, the key pulsed more brightly, its light pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The Shadow Master would not defeat her, not if she could help it. The village was trapped in the past, but Ellie was determined to help it break free. And in the process, she would unlock the path to the next step of her journey. The darkness at the edge of the village seemed to pulse with a malevolent force, as if the shadows themselves were watching Ellie. She stood at the boundary of the village, where the flickering light of the lanterns faded into the vast expanse of the forest. The moon, though bright, cast little warmth in this place, the chill of the night seeped into her bones. Ellie could feel the weight of the village's history pressing against her, but she steeled herself, gripping the crystal and key tightly. Liora hovered beside her, her wings glowing softly in the darkness. "This is where the Shadow Master's power is strongest," she said quietly. "The village's people are trapped in their own despair, and so the shadows grow ever deeper. But you must press on, Ellie. You must find the source." Ellie nodded, glancing around. She could see faint wisps of movement in the shadows, too quick to catch, but enough to give her pause. The air here felt thick, as if it carried the weight of forgotten memories and unspoken regrets. It was as though the village, the land itself, was holding its breath, waiting for something to shift. "Follow me," Ellie said, her voice steady despite the unease that clawed at her chest. She began to walk toward the shadows, the key glowing faintly in her hand, casting a soft, silvery light on the forest floor. They had barely moved forward when, from the trees, a soft, fluttering sound caught her attention. A flicker of light danced around them like a distant star, a firefly, its glow delicate and ethereal. Then another appeared, and another, until the air was filled with a soft, glowing swarm of fireflies, their lights twinkling like a constellation of stars. "What are they?" Ellie asked, her voice filled with wonder. "They are the guiding fireflies," Liora said, her voice filled with awe. "Creatures of the night, born from the starlight itself. They guide those lost in darkness, showing the way when all seems uncertain. Follow them, Ellie. They will lead you where you need to go." Ellie hesitated for a moment, but the fireflies seemed to beckon, their glowing bodies pulsing in rhythm with the beating of her heart. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, trusting the creatures of the night to show her the way. The fireflies flitted ahead, their movements graceful and fluid. Ellie followed, her steps becoming more confident with each passing moment. The path they led her down seemed to open up before her, as if the shadows were parting to reveal a hidden trail. The trees around her grew sparse, and soon Ellie found herself standing in a small glade bathed in soft moonlight. In the center of the glade stood an ancient, gnarled tree, its roots twisted deep into the earth. The tree was unlike any Ellie had seen before. Its bark was blackened, its branches reaching upward like fingers trying to grasp the sky. And hanging from its limbs were dozens of glowing orbs, small, shimmering spheres of light. "This is it," Liora said softly. "The heart of the Shadow Master's power. The tree feeds on the despair of the village, drawing strength from the shadows. Its roots run deep into the village itself, feeding the darkness." Ellie stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the village's sorrow pressing down on her, but she knew what had to be done. She raised the crystal and key, its light flaring brighter in the presence of the tree. As she approached, the fireflies fluttered around her, their glow intensifying. The orbs hanging from the tree's branches flickered in response, and Ellie could hear a faint, melodic hum coming from within the tree. It was as if the very essence of the night was singing to her, a mournful song that seemed to echo the pain of the village. The Shadow Master's influence is tied to the darkness in the hearts of the villagers, Liora said, her voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. To free them, you must break the bond between the tree and the shadows. Only then will the village be released. Ellie nodded. She had no time to waste. With a deep breath, she held the key above her head, its light now blinding in its intensity. The fireflies swarmed around her, their glow merging with the light from the key, creating a shimmering vortex of stars. The tree before her groaned, its bark cracking, as though it could feel the force gathering against it. Ellie closed her eyes, focusing on the key and the fireflies. She thought of the villagers, of the woman at the fountain, the child playing alone, the man waiting by his door. She thought of the sorrow that had bound them to this place, and of the hope she had promised them. The light within her grew stronger, fueled by the love and light she carried in her heart. With a single, powerful motion, Ellie thrust the key toward the heart of the tree. The moment the key made contact with the trunk, a shockwave of light exploded outward, scattering the fireflies in every direction. The tree trembled, its branches reaching skyward as if it were crying out in pain. The orbs of light hanging from its limbs flickered and shattered, their light scattering like falling stars. A gust of wind swept through the glade, and the shadows that had clung to the tree began to dissipate, fading into the night air. The oppressive weight that had settled on the village began to lift, and Ellie could feel the land itself breathe again. The village was free. As the last of the shadows faded, the fireflies returned, their lights gentle and soothing. They circled around Ellie, their glow soft and comforting. The village had been saved, but Ellie knew there was still more to do. She had one more fragment to find, one more test to face. But for the moment, the guiding fireflies had shown her the way, and with their help, she had overcome the darkness. Liora landed beside her, her wings glowing softly. "You've done it, Ellie," she said. "The village is free, and the path forward is clear." Ellie smiled, her heart lightened by the success of her mission. "But the journey isn't over, is it?" "No," Liora said, her voice filled with quiet wisdom. "But with every step, you come closer to the truth." With the guiding fireflies lighting their way, Ellie and Liora pressed on, ready to face the next challenge that awaited them. The stars above shimmered brightly, offering their silent encouragement as they moved deeper into the night. The night was still, the air filled with the soft hum of nature as Ellie and Liora continued their journey beyond the clearing where the Shadow Master's influence had once held sway. The village, now free from its shadowy prison, seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The villagers, though still unaware of their liberation, would soon awaken to a world no longer bound by darkness. As the fireflies, now calm and content, drifted toward the sky, Ellie and Liora began to walk deeper into the forest, following a faint glow in the distance. The key pulsed gently in Ellie's hand, its glow now steady, no longer flickering with the uncertainty it had carried before. It seemed to resonate with something beyond them, as though it were responding to the pull of another force, one that was waiting for them just beyond the glade. The path ahead was different now. The trees were larger, their trunks thick with age, and the foliage grew denser, forming a canopy that blocked much of the moonlight. But through the darkness, Ellie could see the faint glimmer of something ahead, an ancient stone structure, partially hidden by the trees. It was unlike anything she had seen before, with towering pillars and intricately carved stones that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. There was an otherworldly aura about it, a sense of ancient power that made Ellie's heart race. "Liora," Ellie whispered, her voice filled with awe. "What is that?" "That," Liora replied softly, "is the glade of the Guardians. A sacred place, ancient and untouched by time. It is said to be the resting place of the Guardians, beings of immense power who protect the balance of this world. They are not of this realm, but they are bound to it, watching over the harmony between the light and the dark." Ellie stepped forward, her eyes wide as she took in the stone structure before her. The air here was different, cooler, thicker, almost as if the very earth was holding its breath. A sense of reverence filled her, and she instinctively knew that this place was sacred. She could feel the weight of its history, its purpose, as though the land itself was alive with secrets and ancient wisdom. As they approached, Ellie noticed movement in the shadows around the stone pillars, figures, tall and cloaked in the same dim light that seemed to emanate from the structure itself. At first, she thought they were mere illusions, phantoms of the night. But as she drew closer, the figures became clearer, their forms solid and real. They were humanoid, their bodies wrapped in flowing cloaks that shimmered like stardust. Their faces were hidden beneath hoods, but their eyes glowed with an ethereal light, watching her with a silent intensity. "Guardians," Ellie whispered, understanding dawning on her. "Yes," Liora said, her voice low. "They are the protectors of this glade. They have watched over this place for eons, ensuring that the balance between light and darkness is maintained. But they are not easily swayed. Only those who prove themselves worthy may gain their trust." Ellie stepped closer to the center of the glade, where the Guardians stood in a circle, their hands raised in a silent gesture of greeting. The key in her hand pulsed in response, its light growing brighter as it seemed to connect with the Guardian's presence. The figures did not speak, but their eyes followed her every movement, as though they were waiting for her to do something. "Do they want something from me?" Ellie asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her heart. "They seek to know your heart," Liora explained. "The Guardians do not give their trust easily. They must see your true intent, your willingness to protect the balance of this world. Only then will they guide you." Ellie swallowed, her fingers tightening around the key. She understood now that her journey had not only been about finding the pieces of the past, but also about proving her strength and resolve in the face of impossible odds. The Guardians would test her, just as the villagers had been tested by their own shadows. As if sensing her thoughts, the Guardians stepped aside, creating a path between them. The air shimmered with energy, and the ground beneath Ellie's feet seemed to pulse with life. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, her heart racing, unsure of what the guardians would ask of her. Suddenly, a voice, deep and resonant, filled the air around her. It came from no one, yet from everyone. To step forward is to accept the responsibility of the balance. Are you prepared to bear this weight, child of the stars? Ellie paused, her mind whirling. She had been on this journey for so long, driven by a desire to right the wrongs of the past and protect those she loved. But the guardian's words held a deeper meaning. This was no longer just about saving villages or finding fragments of a lost world. This was about preserving the delicate balance that held everything together, the balance between light and dark, good and evil, creation and destruction. She looked around at the guardians, their glowing eyes filled with an ancient wisdom that seemed to reach into her very soul. She had come this far, and there was no turning back. She had to prove that she was worthy of the power the key held, worthy of the responsibility that had been entrusted to her. "I am ready," Ellie said, her voice clear and unwavering. "I will do whatever it takes to protect this world and its balance." A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the glade, and the guardians slowly raised their hands in unison. The key in Ellie's hand flared brightly, its light casting long shadows across the stones. The guardians stepped forward, one by one, and placed their hands over hers, their touch cool but steady. The moment they made contact, Ellie felt a surge of energy, pure, untainted power, that coursed through her, filling every fiber of her being. For a brief moment, the world around her seemed to shift. The stars above twinkled more brightly, the air hummed with ancient power, and the very ground beneath her feet seemed alive. She saw flashes of visions, glimpses of worlds beyond this one, of creatures and forces too vast to comprehend, all interconnected by an invisible thread. Then, as quickly as it had come, the energy dissipated. The guardians stepped back, their eyes now filled with respect. "You have proven your heart, Ellie," the voice of the guardians echoed once more. "You are worthy." Ellie stood tall, her heart still racing from the power that had flowed through her. The guardians had accepted her, and with their blessing, the path ahead would become clearer. But she knew that even greater challenges awaited her. The balance she now carried was delicate, and the shadows were still out there, waiting. With the guardians watching over her, Ellie and Liora continued their journey, knowing that they had taken one step closer to uncovering the truth, and to protecting the balance that held their world together. The air had grown thick with the promise of something ancient, as if the very fabric of the night itself had been woven into the shadows of the forest. Ellie and Liora had left the sacred glade of the guardians behind, their hearts filled with a new strength, but also a quiet sense of trepidation. The guardians had granted their blessing, but they knew their journey was far from over. There was one final piece of the puzzle to unlock, the last fragment of the key to the world's balance. As they pressed on, the path before them began to change. The trees, once tall and grand, now became twisted, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The moonlight above was obscured by clouds, casting the world in a velvety blackness. The ground beneath their feet shifted from soft earth to hard, uneven rock, and the sound of distant, echoing footsteps seemed to fill the air, though no one was around. "We are close," Liora murmured, her wings glowing faintly in the dim light. "The cavern is near. We must hurry before the night deepens further." Ellie's heart quickened as she followed her friend through the thickening forest. The air around them seemed charged with an energy that prickled her skin, as though the land itself was aware of their presence. It was as though something ancient and powerful was watching them, waiting for them to arrive. After what felt like hours of walking, Ellie spotted a faint flicker of light ahead. At first, she thought it was another firefly, but as they drew closer, the glow revealed itself to be a crack in the earth. It was a fissure in the stone, wide enough to allow them passage into the depths below. The crack seemed to pulse with an eerie, otherworldly energy, the light emanating from within, but the source of it remained unseen. "This is it," Liora whispered, her voice tinged with reverence. "The Midnight Cavern." It is said that the cavern holds the last of the ancient power, the final fragment that will restore balance to the world. But be warned, Ellie. The cavern is no ordinary place. It tests those who enter, twisting their deepest fears into reality. Only those who are truly prepared can face what lies within. Ellie swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had come this far, and she could not turn back now. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest as she entered the crack in the earth. The world shifted around her as she descended into the darkness. The air grew colder with every step, and the faint glow from above slowly disappeared, swallowed by the vastness of the cavern. Liora flew ahead, her wings flickering like a distant star, guiding the way as Ellie descended deeper into the heart of the earth. The walls of the cavern were covered in intricate carvings, ancient symbols, and runes that pulsed with a faint, eerie light. Ellie ran her fingers along them, feeling the hum of magic beneath her touch. She could feel the power in the air, thick and intoxicating, as though it was alive and aware of her presence. Each step she took seemed to echo in the vast space around her, the sound amplified by the cavern's depths. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and a deep rumbling sound reverberated through the cavern. Ellie's heart skipped a beat as the air around her seemed to shift, and the very walls of the cavern seemed to come alive, twisting and warping in response to some unseen force. "I think it's begun," Liora said, her voice serious. "We've entered the heart of the cavern. Prepare yourself, Ellie." Before Ellie could respond, a blinding light exploded from the depths of the cavern, bathing them both in its brilliance. The ground cracked open in front of them, revealing a deep chasm that stretched down into an abyss. From the abyss, shadows began to emerge, dark, formless shapes that swirled like smoke, creeping toward them with terrifying speed. "Stay close," Liora urged, her wings flaring as she prepared to protect Ellie. But Ellie stood still, her eyes fixed on the swirling shadows. They were not just shadows, they were memories, fears, and doubts manifesting before her eyes. Her heart tightened as she saw the figures of people from her past, her parents, her friends, even her own reflection, distorted and twisted into something unrecognizable. The air was filled with their whispers, their voices calling out to her, reminding her of every mistake, every regret she had ever carried. Ellie, a voice called, low and haunting. It was her mother's voice, but it was distorted, broken. You couldn't save us. You couldn't save yourself. Ellie flinched, her chest tightening with pain. The shadowy figure of her mother reached out to her, its face twisted in anguish. But Ellie stood firm. She had come this far, she could not be shaken by these illusions. No, Ellie whispered, shaking her head. You're not real. I won't be bound by fear. The figure paused, its eyes narrowing as if it were studying her. Ellie stepped forward, her heart still heavy with the weight of the illusion, but stronger than it had been before. She raised the crystalline key high above her head, the light of its glow cutting through the darkness. The shadows writhed as if they were afraid of the light, their forms beginning to dissipate. You are not my past, Ellie said, her voice steady, stronger than she had ever felt. You do not control me. The shadows recoiled, their forms vanishing into the chasm, and the air grew still once more. Ellie breathed deeply, her heart pounding, but the fear had lifted. She had faced the darkness within her and emerged stronger for it. Good, Liora said, her voice filled with approval. The cavern has tested you, Ellie. You have faced your greatest fears and conquered them. As the last of the shadows disappeared, the cavern seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, and the stone walls around them shimmered with renewed light. The path ahead cleared, and there, in the center of the cavern, Ellie saw the source of the glow, the final fragment. It was a stone pedestal, upon which rested a crystal, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse in time with Ellie's heartbeat. This was the last piece of the puzzle, the key to restoring balance. She stepped forward, her heart racing once more, and reached out to take it. As her fingers brushed the crystal, a sudden surge of energy filled her body, and she was enveloped in a blinding light. The cavern seemed to pulse with power, and Ellie's vision blurred as the forces of the world itself seemed to converge on her. She closed her eyes, letting the light wash over her, knowing that she was on the cusp of something monumental. The last fragment was in her hands. The final step had been taken, and the balance was within her reach. Ellie stood still, the crystal pulsing in her hand with an energy that seemed to reverberate through every fiber of her being. The cavern, now quiet and calm, seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the next move. The crystal's light was steady, but it felt heavy in Ellie's grasp, a tangible reminder of the immense responsibility she now bore. Liora hovered beside her, her wings faintly glowing in the dim cavern, her expression unreadable. You have the final piece, she said softly, her voice filled with a mix of awe and caution. The balance is nearly restored, Ellie. But you must be careful. The forces at play are far greater than we understand. Ellie nodded, but her heart was still racing. The journey had been long, and she had come so far, but now, with the last piece of the key in her hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. She looked down at the crystal, wondering what was to come next. Suddenly, a soft sound broke through the silence, a rustling from the shadows beyond the crystal's light. Ellie tensed, her eyes narrowing as she peered into the dark, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. Liora flapped her wings nervously, but Ellie held up a hand to stop her. "Someone's here," Ellie whispered. The rustling grew louder, and then, from the shadows, emerged a figure. At first, Ellie could barely make out its shape, a tall, cloaked figure whose presence seemed to shimmer with an energy that wasn't quite human. The figure stepped closer, revealing a face that was half covered by a hood, but its eyes, deep and shimmering with an iridescent light, locked onto Ellie with a strange intensity. For a moment, Ellie froze. The figure didn't speak, didn't move, but there was something about it, something in the way it seemed to pulse with the same energy that was radiating from the crystal, that made her uneasy. Liora's wings fluttered nervously, but she didn't move. "Who are you?" Ellie asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her heart. The figure tilted its head slightly, studying Ellie in silence. Then, it stepped forward, its movements graceful and fluid. "I am not your enemy," it said, its voice rich and resonant, like the echo of ancient winds. "Though I may appear so." Ellie's eyes narrowed. "You don't look like an ally," she said, her grip tightening around the crystal. "What do you want?" The figure raised a hand in a gesture of peace, and the air around them seemed to hum softly. "I seek only to help you, Ellie. You have come far, but the path ahead is fraught with dangers that even you may not be able to face alone. You have unlocked the final fragment, but there is still one last trial. And for that, you will need more than just your strength." Liora flew closer to Ellie, her eyes filled with suspicion. "We don't need your help," she said sharply. "We've come this far on our own." The cloaked figure's eyes softened, as if it understood the hesitation in Liora's voice. "I do not seek to replace your strength, but to complement it," it replied. "The darkness you are about to face is not of this world, and it will require more than what you have gathered so far to overcome it." Ellie felt a chill run down her spine. The figure's words resonated with a truth she couldn't ignore. The journey was not over. The final trial lay ahead, and she could sense that the forces they were up against would not be so easily defeated. She glanced at Liora, whose wings were still poised for flight, ready to protect her, but Ellie knew they couldn't do this alone. "What do you want in return?" Ellie asked, her voice steady but filled with caution. The figure seemed to smile beneath its hood, its eyes twinkling with an ancient wisdom. "Nothing. I seek no reward, no gratitude. I only wish to see the balance restored, to see the world healed. Ellie studied the figure, weighing its words carefully. It could have been lying, playing on her doubts and fears, but something about the way it spoke felt genuine. The energy it emanated was not threatening, but familiar, almost comforting. It was as though it had been waiting for her all along, ready to step in when the time was right. Liora hovered close to Ellie, still unconvinced. "We can't trust it, Ellie," she said in a low voice. "How do we know it's not working for the shadows?" Ellie looked back at Liora, her expression resolute. "I don't know. But we don't have a choice. We need help. And this being, whatever it is, may be the only one who can guide us through the trial ahead." The cloaked figure stepped forward, its eyes glowing brighter as if it had been waiting for Ellie's decision. "You are wise, Ellie," it said. "The trial you face is not one of strength alone. It is a trial of the heart. And you will need the guidance of those who understand the deeper magic that binds this world." Ellie's grip on the crystal tightened, her mind racing. The last trial. The idea of facing something so powerful, so unknown, was terrifying. But she had come this far, and she could not back down now. "Will you help us?" Ellie asked, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her heart. The figure nodded, its cloak rustling as it moved closer. "I will. But know this, Ellie, your true strength lies not in the crystal or the power it grants you. It lies within your heart. Remember that, and you will succeed." The words echoed in Ellie's mind as the figure turned and gestured for them to follow. Without hesitation, she followed, her heart pounding but filled with a renewed sense of purpose. Liora, though still uncertain, followed as well, her wings beating softly behind them. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, Ellie couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. The shadows were closing in, and the final trial was just beyond reach. But with an unexpected ally by her side, Ellie felt a sense of hope, a spark of light that refused to fade, no matter how dark the path ahead might be. Together, they would face the final trial. Together, they would restore the balance. The cavern seemed to stretch on endlessly, the walls shimmering faintly with the energy of ancient magic. The air was thick with anticipation, and Ellie could feel the weight of the final trial pressing down on her shoulders. Despite the strange ally who had joined them, a nagging doubt lingered in her mind. She had no way of knowing if the cloaked figure could truly be trusted. But as they walked, she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the path ahead. Liora flew beside her, still watchful, her wings glowing faintly in the darkness. The cloaked figure led the way, moving with quiet confidence, its steps barely making a sound. Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that the figure knew far more than it let on. It seemed as though it had been waiting for this moment, for Ellie to reach this point, guiding her toward the trial that would determine the fate of the world. They emerged from the cavern's dark depths and found themselves standing at the edge of a vast, open expanse, The air here was different, clearer, colder, and filled with the sound of something gentle, like the faintest whisper of a song. Above them, the night sky stretched out in all its glory, stars twinkling brightly in the velvet darkness. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. The stars weren't just shining, they were singing. It was subtle at first, a soft hum that seemed to resonate in her bones. Then, as she looked closer, she realized that the stars were pulsing in time with the music, each one glowing brighter and dimmer in a rhythmic pattern that almost felt like a language. The music was ancient, filled with the deep wisdom of the universe, and Ellie could feel it reaching into her soul, stirring something deep within her. "This is the song of the stars," the cloaked figure said, its voice low and reverent. "It is the oldest melody in existence, the sound of creation itself. It is the music that binds all things together, the stars, the earth, the sea, the heart of every living being. And it is the key to the final trial." Ellie's gaze turned to the figure. "The song, is it a test?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as though afraid to disturb the delicate harmony that surrounded them. The figure nodded slowly. "Yes. The song is a reflection of the balance of the world. If you listen carefully, you will hear the harmonies and dissonances, the fragments of light and shadow that make up the very fabric of existence. The final trial is not one of strength or will. It is a trial of understanding, of resonance. You must learn to sing your own part in the song, to find your place within the greater whole." Ellie's heart pounded as she stared at the stars above. The music, though beautiful, seemed overwhelming. How could she, a single person, contribute to something so vast, so infinite? Liora spoke, her voice calm but uncertain. "But how can we even begin? This music is beyond us. It's too much." The figure turned to them, its eyes filled with understanding. "The song is not a burden, Liora. It is a gift. You must not think of it as something to control. You must simply listen, and allow it to guide you." Ellie closed her eyes, trying to focus on the music. At first, all she heard was a cacophony, a chaotic rush of notes and vibrations that overwhelmed her senses. The melody was complex, intertwining like threads in a tapestry, each note weaving into the next in a pattern she couldn't quite follow. But as she breathed deeply, something shifted. The noise began to settle into a rhythm, and Ellie realized that each part of the song had its own distinct place. She focused on the stars above, feeling the pulse of their light as it vibrated within her. It was as if she were being pulled into their song, each pulse of light syncing with the beat of her own heart. The music was no longer just something external, it was a part of her now, a thread that connected her to everything around her, the earth beneath her feet, the wind in her hair, the very fabric of the universe itself. The figure's voice echoed softly in the air. "Listen to the song, Ellie. Feel the balance within it. You must find your harmony." Ellie closed her eyes again, allowing herself to be swept away by the melody. She could feel the vibrations in her chest, her hands trembling with the resonance. It was a feeling of oneness, of unity, everything in perfect sync. But then, a sudden discordance rippled through the music, a sharp, jarring note that seemed to cut through the melody like a knife. Ellie gasped, her eyes snapping open. The stars above her flickered and dimmed as if the balance had been broken. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for a brief moment, she felt lost. What had happened? The music had shifted, and she could no longer hear her part in it. A voice echoed in her mind, her mother's voice, soft and comforting, but tinged with sadness. "You were never enough, Ellie. You couldn't save us." The words hit her like a wave, threatening to drown her in doubt. She felt the weight of her past mistakes, of all the things she had never been able to fix, all the ways she had failed. The discordance grew louder, and Ellie felt the music slipping away from her, her connection to the song unraveling. She was losing herself in the noise. But then, just as quickly as the doubt had come, a new thought rose within her. I am not defined by my failures. She took a deep breath and centered herself, remembering everything she had learned, the Guardian's lessons, Liora's unwavering faith, the trust she had put in herself. Ellie's heart steadied, and as she opened her eyes, she focused once more on the stars. The song was still there, waiting for her. She no longer saw it as a test, but as an invitation, a gift, one that she could accept, not by being perfect, but by embracing her place in the universe, flaws and all. She raised her hand, and as she did, a soft, pure note escaped from her lips. It was a single, trembling note, but it rang out, resonating with the melody of the stars. The discordance began to fade, replaced by a gentle, harmonious chord that intertwined with her voice. The stars flickered in approval, their light growing brighter, and the song swelled around her, embracing her, lifting her up. She had found her place. She was part of the greater whole. Liora, watching with wide eyes, whispered, "You did it, Ellie. You're part of the song." Ellie smiled, her heart full of warmth and peace. The final trial had not been one of power or strength, but of understanding. She had learned that the true magic wasn't in fighting the darkness, but in embracing the light within herself. The song of the stars played on, and for the first time Ellie felt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the final note of the song of the stars reverberated through the air, Ellie stood in the center of the open expanse, her heart still resonating with the melody. The stars above seemed to shine brighter than ever, as if they were watching over her, guiding her toward the next step in her journey. The harmony that had enveloped her felt like a deep, unshakable peace, but that peace was fleeting. The final trial had not yet been fully revealed. The cloaked figure who had guided them thus far stepped forward, its eyes reflecting the starlight. "You have completed the first part of the trial," it said, its voice calm yet filled with an undeniable weight. "But there is one more test, one that cannot be bypassed, no matter the strength you have gathered. This is the trial of courage. Ellie's heart skipped a beat. Courage. It seemed so simple in concept, yet she knew it would be anything but easy. She had faced many challenges on this journey, each testing her resolve in different ways. But this was something deeper, something that would reach into the very core of her being. She could feel it, like the very air around her had shifted, becoming thick with anticipation. "What must I do?" Ellie asked, her voice steady, though she couldn't hide the tremor in her chest. The cloaked figure raised its hand, and the stars above seemed to dim, their light retreating as a dark cloud began to form on the horizon. A cold wind swept through the expanse, carrying with it the scent of something unfamiliar, something heavy with the weight of unseen dangers. The air grew colder, and Ellie could feel the change in the atmosphere. "You must face your greatest fear," the figure said, its voice somber. "Only by confronting it will you find the courage to continue. The darkness you are about to face is not of this world, but it exists within you. It is a reflection of your doubts, your insecurities, the parts of yourself that you have not yet reconciled. Only by standing against it will you be able to move forward." Ellie felt a chill run through her body, her breath catching in her throat. Her greatest fear? What could that possibly be? She had faced so many challenges already, hadn't she proven her courage time and again? But deep down, Ellie knew that there was something she had not yet confronted, something that had always lingered in the shadows of her mind, just beyond her reach. Liora fluttered nervously beside her, her wings trembling. "Ellie, are you sure you're ready for this? It's not something you can just ignore. The fear you'll face, it could be overwhelming." Ellie took a deep breath and looked at her companion. Liora's concern was understandable, but Ellie could feel the pull of the trial. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. "I have to face it," Ellie said, her voice steady. "I have to know what it is, what's been holding me back." The cloaked figure nodded solemnly. "Then you must walk into the darkness. Only there will you confront your fear." Ellie hesitated for a moment, but the need to move forward, to truly understand herself and the path ahead, was too strong. With one final glance at Liora, she stepped forward, moving toward the encroaching darkness. As she crossed the threshold, the air grew colder still. The darkness around her was not just the absence of light, it was alive, pulsing with an energy that felt both suffocating and endless. The ground beneath her feet seemed to shift with every step, as if she were walking on unstable ground. Ellie's heart raced, her footsteps faltering as the fear began to take shape. The darkness seemed to whisper to her, not in words, but in feelings and memories. It was a presence, a cold, heavy weight that pressed in from all sides. She could feel it then, her greatest fear. It wasn't a monster, nor a shadowy creature lurking in the dark. It wasn't even a physical threat. No, her fear was something far more insidious, something that had followed her for as long as she could remember. It was the fear of failure, the fear that, no matter how hard she tried, she would never be enough. That she would fall short, that she would never be able to save anyone, that the weight of the world would crush her under its expectations. Memories flooded back, the faces of those she had failed, the moments where she had felt powerless and weak. The feeling of never being able to do enough, never being able to be the person others expected her to be. "You are not enough," a voice echoed from the darkness, a voice she recognized as her own, though twisted and distorted by her doubts. "You'll never be strong enough. You'll always fail." Ellie stopped in her tracks, her chest tightening with a wave of panic. The darkness pressed in, the weight of her self-doubt growing heavier and heavier. She could feel herself shrinking under the pressure, the voice growing louder, more insistent. But then, she remembered something. The song of the stars. The harmony. The connection she had felt when she embraced the music. She had found her place in the universe, her own unique part in the grand design. The courage she needed was not the absence of fear, it was the ability to stand firm despite it. Ellie closed her eyes and took a deep breath, forcing herself to stand tall against the darkness. "I may not be perfect," she said aloud, her voice shaking but resolute. "But I am enough. I've come this far, and I won't stop now." The words felt strange at first, foreign even, as though she had never said them before. But as she spoke them, something inside her shifted. The darkness around her flickered, as if reacting to her declaration. The coldness began to recede, the weight lifting from her chest. Ellie opened her eyes, and the darkness was gone. She was standing in a quiet, still place, no longer surrounded by shadows, but bathed in the soft, ethereal light of the stars. The presence of fear was still there, lingering at the edges of her mind, but it no longer had the power to control her. She had faced it, and in doing so, she had gained something far more important, the courage to continue, no matter the obstacles ahead. The cloaked figure appeared beside her, its eyes filled with quiet approval. "You have faced your fear and stood strong," it said softly. "The trial is complete. You are ready for what comes next." Ellie nodded, her heart still pounding, but now filled with a sense of quiet strength. She had faced the darkness within herself, and in doing so, had found the courage she had always possessed, but had been too afraid to embrace. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Ellie felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. The light of the stars flickered overhead, their ancient glow casting long shadows across the path ahead. Ellie stood at the edge of a quiet clearing, her breath steady after the trial she had just faced. The trial of courage had tested her in ways she hadn't anticipated, yet it had also awakened a part of herself she had long buried, her inner strength, her belief that she was enough. Now, with the echoes of the trial still resonating in her heart, Ellie found herself standing before a new challenge. The path that lay ahead was unclear. shrouded in a mist that seemed to twist and shift with a life of its own. The air felt heavy once again, as if something important was about to unfold. The cloaked figure appeared beside her, its presence calm and sure. "You have done well, Ellie," it said, its voice gentle yet filled with an unspoken authority. "But there is another trial, one that will test not your strength or courage, but your understanding of truth. You must find the lantern of truth." Ellie's heart quickened. A lantern? What did it mean? Was it something physical, something she had to hold in her hands, or was it symbolic, a deeper kind of illumination that could guide her in a more profound way? "The lantern of truth holds the power to reveal that which is hidden," the figure continued. "It is not a simple light, it is a light that exposes all truths, no matter how buried they may be. It will reveal what lies beneath the surface of your heart and soul. If you are to complete this journey, you must face the truths you have been avoiding. Only then will you be ready for the final step." Ellie felt a knot form in her stomach. Truth. She had always been afraid of it, hadn't she? She had spent so long running from the parts of herself she didn't want to see, her failures, her regrets, the doubts that still lingered in the corners of her mind. But the words of the cloaked figure rang in her ears. "If you are to complete this journey, you must face the truths you have been avoiding." Liora, who had been silent for most of the journey, looked at Ellie with a knowing gaze. "You've faced your fears. This is just another part of the same path. Whatever it is, you can handle it." Ellie nodded, taking a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the task ahead, but she also knew she couldn't run from it. Not anymore. Not after everything she had learned. Together, they walked deeper into the mist, which seemed to swirl around them as though it were alive, guiding them towards something hidden. The ground beneath their feet felt soft, as though they were walking on moss-covered earth, yet there was no sound of their footsteps. The silence was profound, and Ellie felt an eerie stillness settle in her chest. She could sense that something was waiting for her, something important, just ahead. And then, there it was. In the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, its surface carved with ancient symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Upon the pedestal rested a small, delicate lantern, its frame made of silver and adorned with intricate patterns. The lantern was empty, no flame burned inside, no light flickered. It was as if it were waiting for something, waiting for her. "This is the lantern of truth," the cloaked figure said, its voice distant, as though it were speaking from another time. "It holds no flame of its own. The light it carries is the light of your truth. It will illuminate only that which you are ready to face." Ellie stepped forward slowly, her hand trembling as she reached for the lantern. As her fingers brushed its cool surface, she felt a surge of energy, like a pulse running through her veins. The lantern seemed to come alive in her hands, its intricate patterns glowing brighter with every passing second. Suddenly, the world around her shifted. The mist parted, revealing flashes of memories, moments she had long since buried. She saw herself as a child, watching her parents argue, the words sharp and painful. She saw her failures, her mistakes, her fear of never being good enough. She saw the faces of those she had tried to protect, but in the end, had failed. Her heart ached with the weight of it all. But then, she saw something else. She saw moments of strength, times when she had chosen to stand tall in the face of adversity, when she had acted with kindness, even when it seemed impossible. She saw Liora, always at her side, offering encouragement and friendship. She saw the stars, their light guiding her, reminding her that even in the darkest times, there was a way forward. The lantern's glow grew brighter, and Ellie understood. The truth was not just the failures or the pain she had experienced. It was the light that had always been there, hidden beneath the shadows. The truth was that she was capable, that she had the strength to face whatever lay ahead. She had made mistakes, yes, but she had also made choices that had shaped her into the person she was today, someone who was worthy of the journey. The mist seemed to fade, and the clearing was bathed in the soft, golden light of the lantern. The truth was not a burden, it was a light, one that Ellie could carry with her. She had faced the darkness within herself and had emerged with a clearer understanding of who she was and what she could become. The cloaked figure nodded, its eyes filled with approval. "You have done well, Ellie. The lantern of truth has shown you what you needed to see. You have faced your past, accepted it, and embraced the light within you." Ellie's heart was lighter than it had been in a long time. The lantern's glow still flickered in her hands, but it no longer felt heavy or oppressive. It felt like a gift, a source of strength that she could carry with her as she moved forward. "You are ready," the cloaked figure said. "The final step awaits." Ellie nodded, her mind clear and her heart full of determination. She had faced her truths, embraced them, and had come to understand that they were not what defined her. It was her choices, her courage, and the light she carried within herself that mattered most. The journey was far from over, but Ellie knew one thing for certain: she was ready for whatever came next. The golden light of the lantern of truth still danced in Ellie's hands, its flickering glow casting shadows on the ground as she walked deeper into the heart of the forest. The mist had receded, leaving behind a sense of stillness that seemed almost sacred. The path ahead was clearer now, and Ellie's heart was steady, though her mind was still processing the revelations of the lantern's light. Her past, with all its hidden corners and unspoken truths, was no longer a burden. It was a part of her, woven into the very fabric of who she had become. Ellie had accepted her mistakes, her doubts, and her fears. But more importantly, she had embraced the strength that had emerged from them. She now carried the lantern not just as a symbol of truth, but as a reminder of the light she had found within herself. As they moved forward, the soft rustle of leaves filled the silence, but something was different now. The forest around them seemed alive, not just with the natural sounds of the night, but with a deeper, more resonant hum. It was as if the very earth beneath their feet was whispering to them, calling them forward. Liora, who had been flying just above Ellie's shoulder, let out a small, cautious chirp. "Do you hear that, Ellie?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Ellie paused, listening closely. At first, she heard only the wind rustling through the trees, but then, faintly, there was a sound, like a distant echo, rising and falling with a rhythmic pulse. It was as if someone, or something, was calling her name, softly, yet urgently. "Ellie," the voice whispered, barely audible, but unmistakable. A chill ran down Ellie's spine. The voice sounded familiar, like a memory from long ago. She strained to hear it again, her eyes scanning the darkness around her. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice steady but filled with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. For a moment, there was nothing but the silence of the forest. Then, the voice came again, clearer this time, as though it were right beside her. "Ellie," it was her mother's voice. Ellie's breath caught in her throat. She had not heard her mother's voice in so many years. Her mother had always been a presence in her life, but after the long separation that had followed her father's disappearance, Ellie had only heard echoes of her in her dreams. Could this truly be her mother, or was it just a trick of the forest? "Where are you?" Ellie whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. The sound of footsteps, soft, hesitant, reached her ears. They seemed to come from the direction of a small grove just ahead. Without thinking, Ellie moved toward the sound, the lantern's light guiding her forward. As she stepped into the grove, the mist seemed to gather again, but this time it was different. The air felt warmer, as though the light of the lantern was merging with something else, something from the past. And then she saw her. A figure stood at the edge of the grove, bathed in soft, golden light. Her mother, or at least, a vision of her. She looked just as Ellie remembered, standing in the same way, her smile warm and comforting. Her eyes, filled with love and sorrow, were fixed on Ellie. "Mom?" Ellie's voice trembled with emotion. The figure smiled, but there was a sadness in her gaze. "Ellie, my dear," she said softly. "You have come so far." Ellie's heart ached, and she took a step forward. But you're—" "I am not truly here," the figure said, her voice gentle yet full of an undeniable strength. "I am an echo of the past, a memory you have carried within you. I have always been with you, Ellie, even when you couldn't see me. Even when you thought I was lost." Ellie felt tears sting at the corners of her eyes. "I've missed you so much, Mom. I've wondered if I was ever good enough, if you would ever be proud of me." The figure's smile softened, and she reached out as if to touch Ellie's face, though her hand passed through the air, as if made of mist. "You are more than enough," she said, her voice full of warmth. "I have always been proud of you. You have a strength within you that you have only just begun to understand. You've carried the weight of the past, and now you are ready to let it go. You must forgive yourself, Ellie. For your fears, for your doubts, and for the choices you made. Ellie's breath caught. Forgive myself? Yes, the figure said softly. The pain you carry is not yours to hold forever. It is time to release it, to move forward. The past is a part of who you are, but it does not define you. You are more than your past, Ellie. You are what you choose to become. Ellie's chest tightened, the emotions too much to hold back. The weight of all the years, the regrets, the loss, all of it seemed to surge within her. She had spent so long running from the past, from the memories of her mother, from the pain of loss. But here, in this moment, she realized the truth. It was time to let go. I'm sorry, Ellie whispered, her voice trembling. I never meant to leave you behind. The figure smiled again, her eyes filled with love. You haven't left me behind. I am with you always, in your heart. And I will always be proud of you, Ellie. Remember that. As the figure faded into the mist, Ellie stood in silence, her heart heavy with the weight of the conversation. But there was something else, too. A sense of peace. The pain she had carried for so long was not gone, but it had been softened, like a storm that had finally passed. She no longer had to carry the burden of guilt or regret. Liora, who had remained quiet throughout the vision, flew over to Ellie's shoulder. Ellie, are you all right? She asked softly. Ellie nodded, a smile playing on her lips. I think I am. I just needed to hear it. I needed to understand that it's okay to let go. Liora chirped, her wings fluttering in excitement. Then we can keep going. You've faced the past, and now you can look ahead. The path is open. Ellie looked ahead, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The forest before her was no longer a place of shadows, but a place of new beginnings. The echoes of the past had faded, leaving room for the future. And with the lantern of truth still glowing softly in her hands, Ellie knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. The night had stretched long, its shadows retreating as the last remnants of mist disappeared into the trees. Ellie stood in the center of the grove, her heart still racing from the vision of her mother, an echo of the past that had helped her see the truth she had long avoided. She could still feel the warmth of the golden light from the lantern of truth in her hands, but it was no longer just a light to guide her through the darkness. It had become a symbol of the strength she now carried, a reminder of the courage she had found within herself. As she turned to look at Liora, who had perched herself on a low branch above her, Ellie felt a sense of quiet realization settle over her. The time for facing the past was now behind her, and ahead lay the final leg of the journey, whatever that might be. Do you think we're close? Ellie asked softly, her voice reflecting the weight of the journey that had brought her here. To the end, I mean. Liora tilted her head thoughtfully. I think we're closer than you realize. You've already crossed so many thresholds, Ellie. The dawn is near. Ellie nodded, gazing up at the sky. The first hints of morning were beginning to pierce the horizon, a soft glow beginning to chase away the remnants of night. The stars that had been her guide since the beginning were slowly fading, their light dimming as the sun prepared to rise. For a moment Ellie stood in silence, watching as the sky shifted from midnight blue to pale gold. She could feel the weight of the moment, the culmination of everything she had learned, everything she had faced. The lantern of truth still glowed in her hands, but now it seemed almost unnecessary. The light from the dawn would soon be enough. Liora's voice broke the stillness. Ellie, do you remember the stories you used to hear when you were a child? About the first light of the dawn, how it brings hope and new beginnings. Ellie smiled, the memories of her childhood rushing back. Her mother had often told her those stories, especially when things had felt uncertain. Yes, she said, her voice soft. I remember. It's true, Liora continued, her tone filled with quiet wisdom. The dawn brings with it more than just the sun. It brings the chance to start anew, to let go of what was and embrace what is to come. You've done that, Ellie. You've faced your fears, confronted your past, and embraced the truth of who you are. The dawn is here for you. Ellie felt a gentle warmth rise within her chest as Liora's words sank in. It was as if a new chapter was beginning, not just in the journey she was on, but in her life as a whole. She had arrived at this moment, after all the trials, the pain, the uncertainty, and the healing. She was no longer the same person who had set out on this path, lost and unsure. She was stronger, clearer, and ready. The first rays of the sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden glow that lit the grove. The light was soft at first, a mere whisper of dawn, but it quickly grew brighter, bathing everything in warmth and promise. Ellie raised her face to the light, feeling it soak into her skin, filling her with a sense of peace she had not known in years. This is it, Ellie whispered, the truth of it resonating deep within her. The beginning of something new. Liora fluttered down to Ellie's shoulder, her wings glimmering in the sunlight. Yes, it is, she agreed. You've made it. The journey isn't over, but you are no longer the same. The dawn has returned, Ellie. And with it, the promise of new possibilities. The golden light of the dawn seemed to swirl around them, like the earth itself was breathing, coming to life with the new day. Ellie felt a surge of gratitude, a deep sense of connection to the world around her. The past was behind her, and the future was a canvas yet to be painted. Thank you, Ellie whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Thank you for helping me see. Liora chirped softly, her eyes bright with affection. You've always had the strength within you, Ellie. You just needed to find it. Ellie stood in the clearing, the dawn now fully upon them. The forest around her was no longer shrouded in mystery or darkness. The trees stood tall and strong, their branches swaying gently in the morning breeze. The path ahead was clear, illuminated by the soft light of the rising sun. She could hear the faint sound of birdsong in the distance, a new day beginning in earnest. It was a sound that filled her with hope, a reminder that every ending was also a beginning. She had faced the trials of the night, the shadows of the past, and now she was ready to step forward into the light of the new day. With one last look at the grove, Ellie turned toward the path that lay ahead. The journey wasn't over, but the end was no longer uncertain. The future awaited, and she was ready to embrace it. The lantern of truth had served its purpose, its light fading as the first true light of dawn took its place. And as Ellie walked forward, the echoes of the past, the trials, the lessons, all seemed to merge into a single, guiding truth. She was ready. The dawn had returned, and with it, her future. And Ellie knew, with all her heart, that she was no longer lost. The sun climbed higher, bathing the world in a soft, golden glow that seemed to embrace everything it touched. Ellie walked forward, her footsteps light and steady, as though she were walking on air. The path before her was no longer shrouded in uncertainty or darkness. The forest, once thick with shadows, now stood vibrant and alive, welcoming the new day with open arms. It was a place of rebirth, a place where the past could be honored, but not allowed to control the future. As Ellie walked, Liora flew ahead, her wings sparkling like tiny stars in the bright morning light. The little owl had been her constant companion, her guide through the trials and mysteries of the journey. Together, they had faced the unknown, and together, they had emerged into the light of a new dawn. Ellie paused for a moment, looking back at the grove where her mother's echo had faded into the mist. The vision had been both a reminder and a release. She had felt her mother's presence, the weight of the past that had shaped her, but also the love and pride that her mother had always held for her. Ellie had forgiven herself for the things she had carried too long and had learned to honor the woman she had become. She smiled softly, knowing that she would carry her mother's memory with her, but that it would no longer weigh her down. The truth, now shining brightly within her, would be her guide from here on out. Ahead, the path wound through the trees and toward the distant hills where the morning sun kissed the earth with warmth. Ellie could feel the promise of that place, of what lay beyond the horizon. It wasn't just a journey through the forest, it was a journey into her own future, one she was ready to meet with open arms. The lantern she had once held so tightly, now dimmed and no longer needed, felt like an old chapter. She no longer needed a physical light to show her the way. She had become the light. Liora, ever the loyal companion, fluttered back to Ellie's shoulder. "We've made it," she said, her voice soft and filled with a quiet satisfaction. "You've found your way." Ellie nodded, looking ahead at the vast, open landscape that stretched before her. The sky was clear, the air fresh with the scent of pine and earth. The world felt infinite, filled with endless possibilities. "You were right, Liora," Ellie replied, her voice filled with newfound resolve. This is just the beginning, not the end. I can feel it, the possibilities are endless. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. It was the map that had guided her through the forest, the one she had clung to in her moments of doubt. She studied it for a moment, but now it no longer seemed like a map of directions. It had been a map of her own heart, her own growth, each landmark along the way marking a piece of her transformation. Now, she folded it up carefully and tucked it back into her pocket. She no longer needed it. The world was her canvas now. As Ellie continued her journey, the forest slowly gave way to rolling hills, and then to wide, open meadows where the grass swayed gently in the breeze. The morning sun bathed everything in a gentle warmth, and Ellie could see the distant silhouettes of villages nestled in the valley below. She didn't know exactly where her path would take her, but she knew that she was ready to meet whatever came next. For the first time, she felt truly free, free from the past, free from the weight of her doubts and fears, free to become the person she was always meant to be. As she walked, Liora flew ahead again, her wings gliding gracefully in the air. She chirped back to Ellie, as though encouraging her forward. There's so much to discover, Liora said, her voice filled with excitement. So much waiting for you. Ellie smiled, feeling the same excitement growing within her. The world was wide, and her heart was open to it. She wasn't bound by the shadows of what had been. The dawn had brought with it the light of a new day, and with it came the chance to start again, to rebuild, to grow. She could already feel the stirrings of the new chapter in her life. There would be challenges, yes, but she was no longer afraid. With every step, she became more certain of her strength, her resilience, and the power of her own truth. She took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh morning air, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace. The world was waiting, and she was ready to meet it head-on. No longer would she be held back by what she couldn't change. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. Ahead, the landscape unfolded, a vast expanse filled with possibilities. Ellie's heart swelled with hope. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage, with love, and with the unshakable belief that she was enough. She had learned the most important lesson, that her future was in her hands, and it was a future she was ready to embrace. Liora perched on her shoulder, chirping softly as they walked together toward the rising sun. This is the beginning of something beautiful, Ellie, she said. And Ellie, with a smile on her lips and the light of the new dawn shining in her heart, knew that the journey ahead was full of endless possibilities. It was, at last, a new beginning,